Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Z.
And I'm Ann Z.
And this is part of our chat together. This is for the fun of it. Z Sisters Pickleball is certainly our passion right now, but we're going to revisit so many different ways that we just learn to love the sports, learn to love games in general, the outdoors, and pretty much doing it all together. So, Ann, why don't you start with Thousand Oaks, 1968. Why don't you go ahead from there?
Thousand Oaks, 1968. We were
Thousand Oaks,
playing
California.
outside. We had a lot of friends that we played baseball with over the line, 3 flies up at our local park, just down the street from where we lived. And we were tired of swimming lessons. We told our mom that, do we have to do the 8 a.m. swimming lessons anymore? We're ready for something new. So she signed us up for tennis lessons. 1968 is key because that was the first year of open tennis, meaning the pros and the amateurs got to compete together again. And it was also that summer that we got our first color TV set. And I remember watching Wimbledon on it. The grass was green. Do you remember that, Carrie?
I do. I remember watching Billie Jean, but going back to the open tennis and where the professionals could actually play in the Grand Slam events. And I remember we have been playing tennis a little bit at Thousand Oaks High School with our classes, and then Mom and Dad got us tickets to the Forum, the LA Forum, and to watch Billie Jean King, Rosie Casals, Kenny Rosewall, Rod Laver, and we kind of knew who they were. So we were in just like binocular seats. But at that moment, we saw the tennis. And I knew that tennis could be part of our lives and my life for sure. So that was a game changer right there. Seeing the actual men and women play together and what they could do with their
In
lives.
person. That had a big impact. But as we then stopped our swimming lessons and were signed up for tennis lessons, our mom would come by in the station wagon about 2:30 in the afternoon and take us to the high school courts to play in our classes. And I wasn't really excited about it then. It wasn't until months later that we get to see the pros, but it was taking us away from a game that we already knew how to play. Baseball. Tennis, we didn't. So showing up for the tennis class the first day, we had a can of balls and a wooden racket that came from blue chip stamps,
right?
That you got from the grocery store. And my mom put them in the book and then saved up for 2 wooden tennis rackets.
Right.
So the tennis balls were white. And we handed 3 balls to the teacher, ran back to the baseline, hit 3 balls over the net, went and picked up 3 balls and got back into line. And that wasn't boring. That was so fun. However, because we had just come from baseball practice or practicing with our friends, I remember hitting a record 14 over the fence that day. And so when I became a teacher, I didn't want any kid to ever break my record. So when they started to hit him over the fence, I had to warn him of that.
And I had a young teacher. Her name was Carol Ramsey, and she was 17, and she was a senior at Thousand Oaks High School. And she had that 1960s bob, and she had her iridescent lipstick on, and she just wanted us to play. And I remember asking Carol one day, Carol, what time is it? And she had this very cool mod watch, this wide band, and it had an airplane going around as the second hand. I said, Carol, what time is it? And she said, it's time to play tennis. So even now today, I was asked that yesterday by a young 5-year-old. Coach Carrie, what time is it? I said, it's time to play tennis. And then I tell them that story. So when somebody else in the class asks that, they're going to say, Coach Carrie says it's time to play tennis. So just think of, again, 1968, and this is present day. Those kind of things are so impactful, and those people made a huge impact in our lives, which is really neat.
Well, and I was the advanced age of 11 and a half that summer. And I thought, this is probably too late to be starting a competitive sport. Carrie, you were 9 and a half, almost 10. And we did play one tournament that summer.
We did.
And it was the LA County novice for non-ranked players. And I remember we got to go in Carol Ramsey's VW Bug.
Right.
and go to the tournament. And you came away with this little tiny trophy in the 10 and unders. That
Hmm.
was so exciting. So that gave us the tennis bug. We practiced through the fall and came back the next year with more kids in the area who were taking tennis lessons. And we felt like we were seasoned veterans because I think that summer we played in 2 tournaments.
Right. I think
And
they were both local, weren't they?
local tournaments. So we
Mhm.
didn't know what was far reaching outside of our little area in Thousand Oaks and Southern Cal in particular. But our mom then talked to our then tennis coach, Terry,
Mhm.
and he says, if you are church going folks, the finals to tennis tournaments are on Sundays. And that gave Carrie and me some ideas about, well, maybe we wouldn't have to go to church if we got to the finals. So we had a little bit of a goal.
Right.
And that summer, Carrie, I think you were, I guess at that point you were 10,
Right.
and you had a very impactful match against a 7-year-old. You want to
Well,
tell us
then
about it?
that's when we got our USLTA card, United States Tennis and Lawn Association card,
Lawn Tennis
and
Association, yeah.
and I still have that. I still have that first one, and so we got to play the sanctioned event at the Los Angeles Tennis Club, and that's as old as you get in Southern California. So we walk in and everybody's wearing white. We had to wear white. Billie Jean also talks about that in her book. So I draw somebody who is 8 years old, maybe 6 years old,
No, she was 7.
7 years old. Okay, and we had to play away from the Los Angeles Tennis Club, and it was at in Griffith Park at Plummer Park Courts. And so my mom and I don't know if my dad, I think my mom and dad were sitting on the bench. And also this young opponent's mother was sitting on the bench. And she was so little. And I just hit the you know what out of the ball. And I lost. I lost in 3 sets. But during the conversation that my parents are having with this youngster's parents, she said, we're quite a tennis family. And for years and years, the loss to Tracy Austin was my worst loss ever. And then all of a
We
sudden,
teased you for losing to a 7-year-old until
right? And then all of a sudden, she wins the U.S. Open at 16, and that was probably my best loss because that middle set, I did beat her 6-0. So later on, when she wrote a book, we went to the book signing here in Larkspur, California, and she did sign that. I did tell her the story, and she said, "Carrie, thanks for playing that tennis match, but remember, I won it. I might have lost the second set 6-0, but I won the match." So always competitive, Tracy. I'm waiting for you a little bit later on. Maybe we'll catch up on the pickleball
well,
court. There you go.
that's that summer. That was we just learned so much. Tracy's name was in red, so she was a seeded player. We didn't know what that meant. We
No.
didn't know what sanctioned, non-sanctioned tournaments. We didn't
Mhm.
know that if you lost, you were done. So we entered many, many tournaments, more than 2, as I recall, and we lost a lot of matches. I mean, I remember losing 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. And maybe if I could win a game, then I was really excited. But that didn't deter us. We
No.
kept thinking, well, we can improve. We're going to learn how they do it to us. We didn't really have what you'd call high-end tennis coaching. We had Parks and Recs department lessons, and we just loved playing tennis. We could get the ball over the net pretty easily. We learned about doubles.
Mhm.
We played mostly singles at that point, but it was just for fun. We just did it because we loved it. I mean, I think that was really the entry. There was really very little money in
Mhm.
tennis at that point until then the excitement of when Chris Evert was 16 years old came about and she played Billie Jean King at the US Open. So here was somebody that was close to our age, a few years older, but making it happen and just really, really an exciting time in tennis.
Mhm.
Um, that year that she played, that was 1971, 72. I think Billie Jean King had just made $100,000
Right.
as the first woman athlete to make
Mhm.
that much money. And so the prize money still, by today's comparison, is nothing.
Yeah.
But it was just something that we could sort of feel like we're along for the ride and be a big part of.
Mhm.
As far as women's and girls sports, tennis really was the one game, that and golf, where women were going to be able to make a little bit more money.
Right.
So at the point where we had having a little bit of local success in Thousand Oaks. We had to make a big decision about what we were going to do with our other sports activities. Carrie, do you remember we were playing on the softball team for our middle school?
Right. So I was playing shortstop, and our friend Margaret and Debbie, they were also on our team. And Margaret is the catcher, and she had a wild arm. So here I am at short, right? Probably 15, 20 feet from the bag, from the second base bag. Throws it down to start the inning, and she hits me in the head with the softball. Knocks me out. My two front teeth are there. I don't know where I am. And so I wake up in the hospital, and my dad says, Carrie, I think we're going to have to make a decision. Do you want to be a professional softball player, or do you want to be a professional tennis player? And I raised my hand and I said, I'll go for tennis. So that was kind of the point where I really did make a decision. I wanted to be, we grew up loving the Los Angeles Dodgers, and number 30, Maury Wills, the shortstop of the LA Dodgers, was my hero. I thought I was Maury Wills at short. So I am always a shortstop, but tennis, I'm so glad that I chose tennis for sure.
And my first base career on the Dodgers with Wes Parker was probably going to be cut short too. So we did make that decision to go to tennis, and it still was something that we could identify with. And in our little circle, there weren't others that were as good as us, though we had a lot to learn and lost to a lot of people who were ranked. So by the time our middle school days were over and we then moved to Northern California, we discovered how many really good players there were in Northern California. So our world expanded again, and we played more tournaments. The good news about moving and not having many friends is that we practiced tennis all the time. So we went down to the local courts in San Rafael at Albert Park, and our first day there, we meet Mr. Walsh, Les Walsh, Sharon Walsh's dad. Now, Sharon was 5 years older than me, and she was in the 18 and unders at that point and had just won the U.S. Title, the girls 18 championship. And she was a serve and volleyer. And that's what we did after playing the style like Billie Jean King in Southern California. And we meet Sharon's dad. This was like the most exciting thing ever. And soon she returned back from her early days on the Virginia Slims tour. Right. And we got to have lunch with her and meet her and look at her trophies and look at her scrapbooks. And Mr. Walsh sort of became like a mentor to us because he just wanted to talk about Sharon's fun part. And here he had new students, new people to share tennis with. And so we became lifelong friends with the Walsh family. And Sharon to this day has a special spot for us because then she hit with us at Albert Park. I mean, again, she was still just barely a teenager herself, but how exciting to be able to meet somebody who had actually won a big title.
Well, the fun part
of the professional tour.
The fun part about that is when our dad got transferred to Northern California for work, then we settled. He said, we're going to settle in San Rafael. And the Tennis USA magazine, which was the USA, the USTA magazine then, right? She was on the cover of it, and she winning the 18s, hitting a forehand volley or a backhand volley. And so the article was about her. And in the article, she said she loved horseback riding, and she practiced at Albert Park in San Rafael. So we went there in search of Sharon Walsh, and we knew she wasn't going to be there, but we did find Les Walsh, and he was just a darling. He wanted to grab onto us because I think he saw our athleticism. I think he saw our hunger, and all we wanted to do is talk about Sharon and listen to stories. And all he wanted to do is talk about Sharon and work on our all court game. It was serve and volley then. And I can remember hitting overheads after overheads and volleys with him. And we had basis. We had the continental grip. So we had that. I don't know. Terry must have really given that to us.
Well, we had one-handed backhands.
One-handed backhand.
In the style of Rod Laver's as a lefty.
Idolized. And Rosie Casals.
And Rosie, yeah. The one-handed backhand was still in, but we were influenced again by watching Chris Evert, who was our favorite, player who was really sort of making it then
Mhm.
with the two-handed backhand. And what she had was balance, and
Mhm.
she had determination,
Yeah.
and it just was something as a study. I mean, we then followed Chris Everett around whenever she would come to the Bay Area and play tennis,
Mhm.
and read every single tennis magazine that we could, and just consume tennis just in every single thing that we did. It was
Mhm.
just all about how can we improve and how can we get better. And it didn't mean that we didn't lose a lot of matches. We did. But what I tell people too is I don't think that anybody can say that they still play tennis after losing as many 6-0, 6-0 matches as I did personally, and still play tennis. There's just
Mhm.
no way on earth. Most people would have given up.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
also, except for the fact that then once you play singles in the morning, you get to play doubles in the afternoon.
Right.
And this is where Carrie and I really, really picked up our games, and they suited one another. Carrie right-handed, me left-handed.
Mhm.
Carrie on the forehand side, I was on the backhand side. If we had been one player, we would have been
Right.
competing against Chris Everett. But I'm telling you, the doubles wins in the afternoon, we're trying to put things together, how our volleys really helped us, how
Mhm.
our teamwork helped us. And so that idea of upward spiral is, here is something because you love to do it, and
Mhm.
it's going to improve because you keep doing it. You
Right.
can't improve if you don't keep doing it.
No.
And the doubles game was so exciting because we loved the idea of a team
Mhm.
from all our years of watching baseball, but we also loved to see what we could challenge ourselves with our shot making.
Mhm.
And we did have some success with doubles and finally got a ranking. And while Carrie did a little bit better in singles than I did, I still had I was sticking to the serve and volley no matter what. I was at the net at every single point that could be. So at that time, then you could probably compare my style to Martina Navratilova.
Right.
I can't say that I had all of her shots, but
Mhm.
I can see the big lefty hook serve wide on the ad court. And so while I thought Chris was probably going to be the better all over, ultimately, and I think Martina ended up beating her head to head finally in the end after their 80 matches. Um, the style that I had was based on Martina getting to the
Mhm.
net and putting it away and being an aggressive player like we saw in Billie Jean King.
Right. Well, that first year when we moved up, I figured out how to keep the rally going, and I'm not sure you figured that out ever. It was
Ever. I didn't
no,
want to keep the ball
no,
going. I
I know that.
wanted to put it away. That was
And
my
so
goal.
so therefore, I was winning matches, and then all of a sudden, you you read the rules, and in the 14 and under, I'm eligible to go to Little Rock, Arkansas, to the nationals, to the 14 nationals. And so I went, and our folks didn't have a whole lot of cash to travel with us, so somehow we got a hold of Mrs. Louie, and I traveled with Peanut Louie and Marisa Louie, and Peanut ended up winning the 12 and unders at Little Rock. And that's when, on the way home, I lost first round singles, first round doubles, and first round consolations. But on the way home, somebody asked Peanut for her autograph because she had that big old trophy with her. So that's when I signed my first autograph. It was on the way
Next to
home.
Peanut.
Yep, next to me. And again, lifelong buddies. I mean, yeah, that Louis family was fabulous. But even, when I see Peanut or any of her sisters, we just give each other a big hug, and all we do is laugh. It's just silly fun. But those are the kind of connections that we've been able to make through this amazing game of tennis. And now we travel into the pickleball world, and some of those people are now playing pickleball, which is so exciting for us.
Coming back around again.
Yeah.
Well, I will say one thing that we learned in doubles as we were playing in a tournament, I believe it was in Palo Alto.
Palo Alto.
We played against Susan Mimobasic and Susan Zaro, and we were rushing the net, of course. We wanted to get there, but what we couldn't figure out is why all the balls they hit were landing at our feet.
Hmm.
So as we returned from that loss and we study and practice for the next week for the next tournament, we said, did you notice that they did those shots? Maybe we could try that against someone else. So then we would do that to some of the more local players in
Right.
our little Albert Park practice sessions, because we
Hmm.
still played at Albert Park. Even Sharon was off on tour still. And it started to work. So we studied how we were being beaten
Hmm.
by people, and then we did it to other people. It
Right.
wasn't rocket science. It wasn't a coach telling us to do this. We
Hmm.
figured it out. And that
Hmm.
actually made more sense to us because we continued to communicate and talk about it morning, noon, and night. I think we
Mhm.
drove our parents crazy with the amount of stuff that we talked, tennis that we talked about.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it was all to get better, to improve. And as we then continued through the junior tournaments, many of the girls that we played and lost 6-0, 6-0, now we were beating 6-0, 6-0.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then many of them were stopping playing because girls do stop sports somewhere around 16, 17, and we kept playing.
Right.
Our improvement then continued through collegiate tennis. My
Mhm.
first year because I'm a year older than Carrie and school-wise, I played on the men's team at the College of Marin. And there were only 2 girls on the team. And it was Title IX saying that if they have no girls' sports
Right.
for that school, then you could play on that team. And I had a blast. I
Mhm.
learned so much by being in a different competitive environment with all the males. It was
Mhm.
really fun. They
Mhm.
treated me like a sister, and we were out to just keep getting better. Carrie, that year that was your senior year in high school, and what did you get to do?
Well, it was very interesting. We had a Dr. Palches was our principal, and he was all that. He was so up on just trying to bring up the girls at Santa Fe High School. And so he called me into his office. It's like, oh boy, I'm going into the principal's office. We did happen to babysit for him, so we did
Mhm.
have a relationship. And he said, Carrie, if you'd like to, you can play on the boys tennis team. And it's like, okay, I can do that. So I went out for the boys team. It was Coach Milt Hain, who was not necessarily inviting, but he was okay with me there because I think he thought I was a pretty good player. Well, I challenged the number 3 singles player, and I beat him. And it was Al Guillory, and he was so upset that he went home and he punched his wall and he broke his hand. So we lost our number 4 singles player, but I played 3 singles all season long, and we did go championship with Redwood High School that year. So all in all, it works out. You learn how to just step up and say, I'm gonna do this, and look what we got. Talk about a different competitive environment. You're right, Ann. Very, very,
Well,
very.
then after that year on the men's team, we revitalized because Carrie then was going to come to College of Marin, the program at the College of Marin. So they
Mhm.
formed a women's team because now we had at least a couple of good players, and then more of our friends came to join us, and we won out of 30 matches. I think we practically won every single one of them in junior college.
Mhm. Mhm.
Carrie and I then were successful and got to win what I consider our biggest win, Ojai.
Mhm.
Even if it was in the community college division, Ojai being the longest running amateur tournament in the United States, down in Southern California, where your tradition is to drink the fresh orange juice from the trees in Ojai.
Right.
Such history to that tournament. That was probably the biggest exciting thing that we could do. And that tournament alone, and another one that we did very well with, competing against I got recruited at UC Davis, and
Mhm.
that was a school that didn't give scholarships. Carrie
Yeah.
then followed me to UC Davis, but before that, what happened to you at the last year of College of Marin when I was gone?
Well, College of Marin, all of a sudden, we are a force. And then there was a junior college championship. So we drove down, family in tow. We drove down to Ventura, and we played at the Ventura County community courts. And we pulled off the state championships. And my doubles partner Denise Talley was right there cheering us on. We just had so much fun with each other and supporting each other. And so all of a sudden we're junior college champions and of the state of California. So those are the kind of things that we didn't even know existed. And then we're putting ourselves out there, and then we get it. So
Well, and then at Davis, the team of girls that were played at Davis, all very good students. Obviously, there were not scholarships for sports for Davis,
mhm,
but we had such a top team. Number 1 player, Debbie Cater, now Debbie Cater Logmercino. We had another player, Val Mendoza, who was one of my arch rivals in junior tennis, and now I'm playing above her at
mhm,
number 5 singles, and she was number 6. And our good friend Diane DiMartini, who then played with me 1 year in doubles. And then when I left, played with Carrie. And then what did you do after I left on that one, Carrie?
And then, so then all of a sudden we've got a D3 championship at Salisbury, Maryland to play against or play with.
We left one division to the three divisions when you were a senior.
Right. And so Diane and I won the national championship there. We, as Aggies, we won the first Division III championship. So again, the team aspect was just so much fun, and I loved it when Diane would speak Italian to me on the court. I mean, we just had so much fun. And we would joke around. We keep each other, loose by go Ags, all the way down, up and down the field. And Coach Bob Foster, he would be there. He was a linebacker coach for the men's football team. And he would just stand on the sideline with his grin, and he would just say, "You gotta love it." And yeah, we loved it. We loved it so much that we had 2 wins over UC Berkeley, Division I. That's
we
what
got to play Stanford. I mean, that also was a thrill too. And so we were competing at the highest level of collegiate tennis, played the regional tournaments and so forth. When Carrie and I got to play together, we realized how far we had come from that one day of the Susans to when we were hearing the USC coach, who has recently just passed away, Dave Borelli, offer anything to his players to do what they could to beat us. And we realized we had arrived, because these 2 girls were from Southern California. We hadn't any luck with them early on. I mean, I was beaten 0-0. And here we were playing and competing with them less than 10 years later. So I think that our drive, because we loved the game, we didn't give up, our perseverance, and throughout this time, Carrie's mentioning the fun, we made relationships. We had relationships with either people we lost to or we beat, but we had a friendship that was sparked by tennis and continued no matter which era we played them in. Years later, I'm jumping ahead, but when we got into one of our biggest senior national years, the year that we were in the 35s, we had a win over Susan Memobasic. I will take that as my crowning achievement beyond Ojai, because Susan is now in the senior events, one of the people who wins the most national titles. Susan, without a doubt.
World champion over and over again.
World champion. And we have a win as she was just starting her comeback after stopping her pro tennis career. So you can see that you need to keep setting your sights. You need to keep remembering where you come from. You can see where you're going. And throughout our collegiate days, we then knew that we probably were going to end up teaching. And it wasn't that we didn't think that we were going to be professional, but it cost a lot of money in those days. It was about $25,000 to start out on the futures tennis circuit. And we did play a couple of qualifying or even pre-qualifying tournaments locally, and realized, this probably wasn't in the cards at this point. It was going to cost too much money. And unlike Sharon Walsh, who did have a sponsor, we didn't have that. So we thought, well, maybe we should just start earning money in teaching the game. And so getting some of our local jobs, and getting certified USPTA, because we took our obligations seriously. All the coaches and teachers that we had, we learned something from. Not each of them was a great tennis player, but we thought we could add that too. So we continued playing locally, teaching locally, taking our profession seriously. And it was the beginning really of the USPTA as far as having women pros, in particular. So as we continued, we thought, what better way can you earn money than to play the game that you love and you get to share with other people? So we took our responsibility, especially teaching kids, very seriously, that if we could turn them off in a second, we could also turn them on in a second, and make sure that they at least gave it a try. And we could get most every single kid to hit the ball over the net right away. And that was, I think, because we were so positive with them, knew that our excitement was going to inspire them, hopefully. So we went on to then high school coaching careers, where we had quite a little different level player These girls all were very good. Carrie had the boys team at Redwood High School in Larkspur, and I had the girls team at Redwood High School for years. And we tried as best we could to keep the titles coming. There was a lot of pressure on one side because the school had done so well, and we just tried to keep it going for as long a period as possible. So my proudest achievement, I think, at Redwood is that over all the years as a coach, I was able to help the team win 300 times.
Yeah,
300 wins as a coach is a big deal. It also shows how long I was coaching, but I took it very seriously because, as Dad would say, anyone could lose.
Right.
But in order to win, you have to put all these other things in place, especially with a team of teenage girls.
Well, and then the teenage boys, of course, it's just a little bit different for sure. But what I was going to say about the high school, there comes a moment it could be in the preseason, it could be in a dual match, or maybe even at the end of the season. But there comes a moment when you see, as a coach, you're standing back and you see the team has come together. And at that moment, it that's what makes me want to coach again. And I think what I was reliving or trying to recapture is the moment that our college teams or our high school teams, when we played on, came together. And that feeling of, I don't know what that feeling is, but it's right there. It's that moment. And to revisit that and try to capture that year after year, we did. And that's why we coached. I coached for 11 years. And what were you, 28?
22, 23.
I mean, just nutty, crazy amount of time to come back. But that's what we try to do, as every single season is different. And now doing that, I'm still teaching tennis regularly. And when I see that, when I feel that moment, I can just kind of stand back and capture it and take that snapshot and say, that's why I coach.
Well, and I could say that that's harder to do with a larger team, especially if 6 singles, 3 doubles, whatever the combination of the competition would be. But we were able to do that in our doubles. And so when we had, I think, our most success, and it took a long time to evolve. Again, this is why you don't give up tennis. So in our 30s and then 35s, achieving national titles, winning those national titles, and then earning the #1 ranking in the United States. That was, for us in women's doubles, to me, it was, I felt our mom's present, who was no longer alive, but she was supportive and just sat on the sidelines and smiled no matter if we were winning or losing. So there was no pressure there. But capturing those in doubles, especially with you, Carrie, all that we fought for, all the practices, all the everything. I mean, people talk about this when you see players talk about the amount of time that the family gives up for you and your goal. We did this together. We did this with our family, and we have 3 brothers at home that didn't compete in our same tournaments. They played a little bit, and definitely our youngest brother, Mike, probably plays the most seriously. But how fortunate we were to be able to do something we loved, and then we had the support doing it, all the tennis lessons, all the tennis rackets, the stringing, the shoes, the outfits, all that kind of stuff. And you have to give up a lot to be able to play that much, but we really loved it. So now I'm going to jump forward because I know we're going to come up to the end of the clock here. What that has shown us as we have now evolved into pickleball. I mean, we are tennis players through and through. My heart is with tennis. I will never find anything that's going to mean as much to me. However, pickleball is fun. And when we first tried it 5 or 6 years ago, stepped on with our tennis backgrounds, obviously our bangers, we love to hit it hard. The doubles game in pickleball translates very well because there's a lot of close net play. How exciting to learn something new where we could use the skills we already have and develop them and channel them, and also the competition. Because there's nothing more fun than trying to go out and win. Doesn't mean you're going to every time, but I'm going to go down swinging no matter what, because I'm not going to forget those matches that I lost early on, and I'm going to come back and get you later. So that's the fun of it for me, is just the challenge of something new. as you get older, you aren't 35 years old anymore. You're not
Right.
18 years old anymore, but it is really fun to be able to have your mind think that you are
Hmm.
when you step
Hmm.
on the pickleball court. With the smaller court and a smaller paddle, not racket, it makes it easier to move around and to have the success that is fun when you hit the pickleball over the net.
Right. Absolutely. And then now we go with different kind of connectivity. If we come in with a kind of a rec department or a community feeling, and that's what is so different about the pickleball is it's a throwback of what tennis used to be. You used
What
to
we
just
went through with our
yeah,
rec department days.
exactly. And so you want to play, come on in. You want to get, you need a fourth, come on in. And that's the way tennis used to be. And so I think that we're kind of not even realizing that that's also what's capturing our imagination is, yeah, come on and play. And it is for the fun of it. And
And
the
not
best,
only that, but then it's also relationships. But I
right,
realize is what
yeah,
is my why? I like to go out and play with certain people.
right.
That is absolutely it. I don't have to play with every single person,
No.
and nor do I want to, but I have met so many nice people along the way, and not everybody's going to be my particular cup of tea, but
Mhm.
it is one of those things that building on relationships,
Right.
building on the chance to get better and improve.
Hmm.
Now we talk about pickleball in that same way of studying how some of the younger players do it, and we have no chance that that's going to happen. I'm never going to be a better tennis player, but I will be a better pickleball player still, as I like to
Well,
say. So
and if we take that number one strategy from the Susans is put the ball at your opponent's feet. That's it. I mean, if there's one strategy, yes, you got to get that ball over the net, but put it at their feet. They're going to have to hit up, and boom, you got it.
I'll tell you, I think there's a little bit of a stubbornness when we were losing. If you think back, and I mean, I make this as a broad statement because I still can challenge anybody who's playing pickleball right now that I've played with or watching Z Sisters Pickleball channel. I can guarantee I've lost more than you. I don't care who
Oh,
you
for sure.
are. I
Yeah.
still can make this claim and still play.
Hmm.
Most people give up something that they lose at. What we did was we didn't say, oh, gee, we just hit them a high ball. Oh, see, we just gave them a high ball. No, we said, how do we make that ball go to their feet? Like you're saying
Hmm.
with pickleball. That's the same in tennis as it is in pickleball. So there's many, many connecting dots for us. But
But
if
there's one thing I want to say about the upward spiral is that we built in that broad base at the very bottom of the pyramid or the spiral, and that was our love for it and the imagination that we could have because we are going to lose and things aren't going to go our way, and then all of a sudden we can continue because we have that broad base and that love for learning and for being physical. So when things do go south, when you do lose, then you want to figure it out again. And I think that's what our structure in tennis was, and now I can see that structure happening. The broad base is going to give you more resilience. Is going to give you more grit during those times where you're just losing.
Well, and I think that's what we're going to be doing a future conversation and probably a couple of videos on excuses, because that to me
Hmm.
is one of my pet peeves where I look at it as, okay, if it's dark out and you're under lights, you got to figure it out. If there's
Right.
wind, you got to figure it out. But think back to, as we've now watched through many generations of tennis players that we've grown up with and now or our age, when Martina Navratilova was invincible, and then she had a 6-month period where she started to lose. Now we're going way, way back. But she was no longer invincible. Younger players were coming up, and Sabatini and Graf and Capriati. And so Martina wasn't the top dog anymore. So she hired Billie Jean King, again, our original mentor. And Billie Jean says, remember the feeling you got, Martina, when you were 8 years old and you hit the ball over the net.
Hmm.
Remember that passion, that joy, how fun
Hmm.
it was, the excitement. There's nothing better than getting the ball over the net. And Martina turned it around and had to work on her mental game,
Hmm.
because younger players are going to always come around. Better players are always going to come around. But for you to get what you want out of any game, whether it's tennis or pickleball or hitting baseballs, you have to find that feeling that you get. And
Mhm.
when you can get that feeling, that dopamine, it is the upward spiral. The base is there. Now you're
Mhm.
just going to keep getting better and better as far as your joy,
Right.
because you get to do it.
Mhm.
Being this age, I never thought that I would have been stopping playing tennis. But when
Right.
pickleball came in, I'm on the court now more than I would be if I had been playing tennis.
Yeah, for sure.
So I get a lot more time. It's a lot more social.
Mhm.
There are places you can play everywhere in the world, just like in tennis as well. So
Right.
as pickleball grows, we're here to say that it's possible to, again, achieve those things that you want to do.
Mhm.
You just have to decide what it involves. Is it beating your next door neighbor? Is it playing with your kids? Is it just running around and being silly? That's fine too. And nobody has to be as competitive as us. We're
Yeah.
talking a lot about our competition days, but
Mhm.
that has built our base for when we
Right.
step onto the pickleball court, because
Yeah.
many people don't have that. So we have to be a little bit more understanding and forgiving that, well, if you want to keep making those excuses and tell yourself you've just hit another high ball to the opponent, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to sort of put your blinders up and do it because you love it.
Right. All right, Ann, this has been fun. Let's do this again. So we will continue. We'll have another chat with the Z sisters on anything we want to talk about. This was just totally organic. This is telling our story for the fun of it. If it's not fun, then don't do it. And if it is fun, continue. So I can't wait for our next chat.
And I will say winning is a little more fun. Just
Absolutely.
so you know,
There's no
you
doubt.
have to keep going for it. You got to have your goals.
No
All right.
doubt.
Thanks, Carrie.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.